Welcome to Justspiracy, the podcast that delves into true crime and mystery stories from around the world. I'm your host, Jessica, and in each episode, we'll explore the details and theories surrounding some of the most notorious cases in history. From unsolved mysteries to infamous killers, we'll examine the evidence, discuss the impact of these crimes, and attempt to uncover the truth. So, grab a cup of coffee and join me on this journey as we navigate the murky waters of the unknown and attempt to unravel the mysteries of the world around us. Welcome to our Halloween episode where we explore the top 5 chilling crimes and mysteries that haunt this Halloween season. From unsolved cases to eerie events, each story reveals a darker side of Halloween that lingers long after the costumes are put away. Starting off our Halloween episode at number 5 is the mysterious and chilling case of Kurt Sova, a 17-year-old who vanished after a Halloween party in 1981, only to be found dead under baffling circumstances just days later. 17-year-old Kurt Sova was the son of Ken and Dorothy Sova, living in a quiet, working-class neighborhood in Newburgh Heights, Ohio. On October 23, 1981, Kurt left home with a friend named Sam, who told him about a party that evening at a nearby duplex. It was a Halloween party, and Kurt, who wasn't known for heavy drinking, ended up consuming large amounts of alcohol, specifically Everclear. This detail was surprising to his mother, as Kurt was not a regular drinker and had a small build, making him even less likely to tolerate such strong alcohol. At the party, Kurt began stumbling around, knocking things over, and soon became sick. The party's host, a woman named Susan, asked Sam to take him outside for fresh air. Sam led Kurt out and left him leaning on a fence while he went back inside to get Kurt's jacket. However, when Sam returned, Kurt was gone. Assuming he had walked home, Sam didn't think much of it, but Kurt never made it home that night. And by Saturday morning, Kurt's parents were extremely worried. Kurt had a habit of coming home by 10 or 11 p.m., and he would have informed his parents if he had planned to stay out late. Dorothy started calling Kurt's friends while Ken searched the neighborhood, combing through places where Kurt might have gone. With no sign of him by Sunday, the Sovas filed a missing persons report and papered the town with flyers. Dorothy's search for answers led her to the duplex where the party had taken place, and initially the woman who had answered the door denied any knowledge of a party or seeing Kurt. However, when pressed later, the party host, Susan, admitted that Kurt had been at the party and that he had been drinking. She described how he had left the party but denied knowing what happened after that. For 5 days, Kurt remained missing, and October 28, 1981, sadly his body was discovered by 3 boys in a ravine behind a warehouse, just 500 yards from the duplex where he was last seen. Kurt's body was laying face up, with one shoe missing and the other found nearby in a pile of rocks. His body showed no significant signs of injury other than minor scratches and bruises, and an autopsy revealed that he had likely died 24 to 36 hours before his body had been found, meaning he had been alive for at least 3 days after his disappearance. Now, the coroner's office could not determine an exact cause of death. Kurt had no trauma, no pre-existing medical conditions, and his blood alcohol level was of 0.11, which was not high enough to be fatal. The cause of death was ruled as a, quote, probable accidental due to, quote, instantaneous physiological death. Essentially, a diagnosis by exclusion because they could not find any other explanation. This inconclusive autopsy left Kurt's parents distraught, with Dorothy convinced that someone knew more about what had happened to him. Dorothy pieced together several strange events that occurred during the 5 days that Kurt was missing. A friend of Kurt's, named David Trisnick, claimed he had seen Kurt 3 days after his disappearance, walking along a street with another boy before getting into a van with someone named Franco. This sighting was never verified, but it raised questions about what had happened during the days Kurt was missing. Additionally, a mysterious man appeared at a local record store during Kurt's disappearance, making cryptic comments that seemed to predict Kurt's death. He reportedly told the store manager to take down Kurt's missing person flyer, saying, quote, "They're going to find him dead in 2 days." This man later left flowers and a note with a chilling message. "Roses are red, the sky is blue, they found him dead and they'll find you too." Police interviewed the man, but they described him as mentally unstable. He disappeared from the area shortly after Kurt's body was found. Another strange incident occurred early in the morning of October 28th when Susan, who had been the party host, called Dorothy at around 3:30 a.m. She claimed that someone was sleeping in her basement and suggested that it might have been Kurt. Kurt's father rushed over to check but found no one there, although a cot in the basement appeared to have been recently slept in. Dorothy later speculated that Kurt might have been held there before his body was placed in the ravine, although this was never proven. Kurt's family also learned that a woman had seen 2 young men dragging an unconscious teenage boy toward the ravine where Kurt's body was later found. At the time, she assumed they were drunk teenagers and did not report it. When she later realized it might have been Kurt, she shared the information with his parents, but police never interviewed her. The case was further clouded by issues within the Newburgh Heights Police Department. The lieutenant who led the investigation was later convicted of assault and drug-related offenses. His reputation raised concerns about the quality of the investigation, with accusations that key leads were ignored, crime scenes were not adequately processed, and potential witnesses were never interviewed. And to complicate matters further, in the months following Kurt's death, a 13-year-old boy named Eugene Cavett, who had also known Kurt, was also found dead in another ravine just 2 miles away. Like Kurt, Eugene had been missing for some time, and his right shoe was also never recovered. Although Eugene's death was ruled accidental, the eerie similarities between the 2 cases raised suspicions. Now, 43 years later, Kurt's case remains unsolved. His parents, Ken and Dorothy, sadly passed away without ever learning the full truth about what happened to their son. In 2019, the Newburgh Heights Police Department reopened the case and began collaborating with criminal justice experts and students to re-examine the evidence. Kurt's remaining family, including his brother Kevin, still hold out hope that the mystery surrounding his death will one day be solved. As we continue our countdown of Halloween crimes and mysteries, we turn to number 4 on our list, the haunting case of Cindy Song, who vanished on Halloween night in 2001. Cindy Song was born on February 25, 1980 in South Korea, where she spent most of her life before moving to Alexandria, Virginia to live with family. In 1998, she enrolled at Penn State University to study integrative arts. She quickly became involved in various organizations, including the Korean Undergraduate Student Association, the American Red Cross, and the Advertising Club. Like many college students, she had her own apartment, worked a job, and enjoyed her social life. On Halloween 2001, Cindy celebrated the holiday dressed in a white skirt and bunny ears, with her roommates and friends at a nightclub. After a typical night filled with dancing and video games, her roommate, Stacy Paik, dropped her off at their apartment around 2 a.m. on November 1st. Paik was the last known person to have seen Cindy. The following day, when Cindy failed to show up for work at a Korean restaurant, her friends grew concerned. While Paik initially reported Cindy missing, noting that short absences weren't unusual for her, the situation escalated when Cindy missed her scheduled shifts, prompting her friends to contact the authorities. The Ferguson Township Police launched an investigation led by Detective Brian Sprinkle. The early stages of the investigation ruled out the possibility of Cindy's disappearance being voluntary, given that she had been registered for classes for the upcoming semester and had plans, including a computer order and Britney Spears concert tickets. As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that there were no signs of a struggle in Cindy's apartment, and her belongings appeared undisturbed. The police conducted hundreds of interviews and deployed bloodhounds and search parties in the areas surrounding her apartment, but these efforts yielded no substantial leads. One prominent theory suggested that Cindy may have ventured to a nearby grocery store, encountering something or someone on her way. The community rallied to support the search for Cindy, and a group of students formed the Coalition to Find Cindy Song, aiming to keep the case in the public eye and pressure the university to assist in the search. On December 5, 2001, 35 days after her disappearance, Ferguson police received a promising lead from Philadelphia about a potential sighting of Cindy being forced into a vehicle. However, this lead proved inconclusive, and the search continued into the new year. As months passed without progress, both the Song family and the Coalition became increasingly critical of the police and the university's response. Cindy's mother, Bansoon Song, and her brother Ki-ho Song traveled from South Korea to the college to aid in the search. They engaged attorney Jin Han to act as their spokesperson and advocate, navigating the complexities of the investigation and holding press conferences to express their frustrations at the slow pace of the search. Despite the lack of concrete leads, the investigation took a turn in June 2003 when state police excavated property owned by Hugo Selinski, who was implicated in other murders. While the excavation yielded several bodies, none matched Cindy's DNA, leaving her disappearance a haunting mystery. In the years following her disappearance, Cindy's case remained open, with investigators periodically reviewing evidence and tips as they arose. The Coalition to Find Cindy Song eventually disbanded as its members graduated, but they had succeeded in keeping Cindy's story alive in the community. Cindy was described as 5'1" and weighing about 115 pounds, and at the time of her disappearance, she was last seen wearing a white shirt, a pink tank top, brown knee-high boots, and a red hooded jacket. She would be 44 years old today. As we continue our countdown, we turn to a chilling case that intertwines cinema and reality. With number 3 on our list, on October 3rd, 2012, 17-year-old Jake Evans committed a horrifying double murder in his family home in Alito, Texas, inspired by Rob Zombie's 2007 remake of Halloween. In his own words, Evans became fixated on a scene featuring a young Michael Myers who coldly murders multiple victims. He watched the film 3 times, reflecting on how at ease the boy was during the killings and how he felt he would experience the same lack of remorse. On that fateful night, Evans sat with his mother Jamie and his 15-year-old sister Mallory, watching the presidential debate. He began to plot their murders, initially considering a knife, but ultimately choosing a .22 revolver he had stolen from his grandfather to minimize their pain. After spending an hour pacing and contemplating the irreversible changes to his life, he summoned Mallory under the pretense that their mother needed her. As she emerged from her room, Evans pointed the gun at her, initially thinking that he was joking. She was shot in the back and then in the head. He then found his mother in the study and shot her 3 times. In a chilling admission, Evans recounted that he realized Mallory was still alive and reloaded the gun to shoot her again. Following the murders, Evans called 911 at about 12:30 a.m., reporting the killings in an eerily calm manner. He said, quote, "It just kind of happened," he told the operator, adding that he had been planning to kill someone for a while. He described feeling suffocated by his family, and expressed a bizarre sense of remorse, stating, quote, "I hate the feeling of killing someone. I'm going to be messed up." Jake Evans was arrested without incident and later charged with capital murder. After pleading guilty, he was sentenced to 45 years in prison, where he will serve at least 22 and a half years before being eligible for parole. Number 2 on our list, on Halloween night, 1984, Doreen Herbert, a 31-year-old pregnant mother, had been trick-or-treating with her 4-year-old daughter, Deanna, before returning home to prepare for more visitors. When Doreen answered the door, she was confronted by a masked intruder dressed as a wolf, wielding a machete. He viciously attacked her while her daughter Deanna hid behind the couch, paralyzed by fear. The scene was horrific. Doreen was found dismembered, and her fetus was discovered on the floor next to a jack-o'-lantern. The attacker left a gruesome blood trail leading away from the house. Initially, Doreen's husband, Charles Herbert, became a person of interest due to his frantic state upon returning home and his blood-stained appearance. However, police quickly shifted their focus toward Doreen's first husband, Mike Dennis, who had a tumultuous past with her, especially following the tragic drowning of their only son, Paul, in 1980. Dennis had never forgiven Doreen for the accident and harbored deep-seated resentment after losing a wrongful death lawsuit against her. When detectives arrived at Mike Dennis's home, they found evidence that strongly linked him to the crime. A bandage on his hand and blood in his home raised alarms. Further investigation uncovered a receipt for a machete, a wolf mask identical to the one found at the crime scene, and even handmade coffins suspected to be intended for Doreen and Charles. Ultimately, Mike Dennis was arrested and charged with first-degree murder for Doreen's death and second-degree murder for the death of her unborn child. He was convicted in 1988 and sentenced to death, although his sentence was later converted to life in prison after California's death penalty was overturned. The aftermath left a profound impact on both Deanna and Charles. Deanna, having witnessed the horrific murder of her own mother at such a young age, expressed a desire to reclaim Halloween and not let the tragedy define her. Charles and Deanna have since become advocates for the death penalty, believing that Dennis should acknowledge the pain he has inflicted. Number 1 on our list, the chilling story of Ronald Clark O'Brien, often dubbed the Candyman or the Man Who Killed Halloween, serves as a haunting reminder of the dark side of Halloween that many parents and children still remember over 40 years later. On the evening of October 31st, 1974, O'Brien took his children trick-or-treating in Pasadena, Texas. He was accompanied by his son, Timothy, who was 8 years old, and a daughter, Elizabeth, who was 5, as well as a neighbor and his children. As they walked from house to house trick-or-treating, O'Brien lagged behind his group. Shortly thereafter, he reappeared, claiming to have found 5 pixie sticks, which were large straws filled with powdered candy. He distributed the pixie sticks to the children, including Timothy, who chose one of the oversized treats before heading home for the night. As the investigation unfolded, it became apparent that O'Brien's actions were far from innocent. Detectives initially suspected foul play, particularly when they learned that O'Brien had been evasive about where he had acquired the poison candy. Under pressure, he finally pointed to a specific house, but the occupant had an airtight alibi, casting further doubt on O'Brien's story. The investigation revealed a troubling motive. O'Brien was in dire financial straits, burdened with over $100,000 in debt. He had taken out life insurance policies on both Timothy and Elizabeth, amounting to $60,000 just before Halloween. Detectives also uncovered evidence that suggested O'Brien had inquired about the lethality of cyanide in his community college classes and had sought to purchase the poison prior to the tragic events of that night. Ultimately, O'Brien was arrested and put on trial in May of 1975, and despite his denials, the jury found him guilty of capital murder, including 4 counts of attempted murder, after just 46 minutes of deliberation. He was sentenced to death and executed by lethal injection on March 31st, 1984. The night of his execution, a crowd gathered outside the Texas State Penitentiary, chanting "Trick or Treat." The impact of this case on Halloween practices is undeniable. In the wake of Timothy's murder, fears spread among parents across the country, leading to heightened caution regarding Halloween candy. Authorities urged families to inspect their children's treats carefully, and many communities experienced a significant decline in trick-or-treating for years to come. Ronald Clark O'Brien's horrific actions transformed him into a figure of urban legend, illustrating the genuine fears associated with Halloween and changing the way families approach the holiday even today. As one former detective noted, people were scared to death, and the specter of poisoned candy remains a cautionary tale in the memories of many. That's all for today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and leave a review. Your support helps more than you know. Also, please be sure to check out my YouTube channel, where I'll be sharing video versions of these episodes, along with exclusive content. And if you have any suggestions for future episodes, or want to share your own stories, please feel free to reach out. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and always remember to look beyond the headlines.